Good evening, visitors, and welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Dan Hiscock, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is Wing Commander Michael Garside. This evening, we are honoured to acknowledge General Dudung Abdurrahman, Chief of Staff of the Indonesian Army, accompanied by Lieutenant General Simon Stewart, Chief of Army, Australia, and their accompanying delegation. As always, we welcome the veterans who have served, those still serving, and the families that love and support them. We acknowledge the members of RSL and Services Clubs Association, RSL Victoria, and RSL Queensland who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Flight Sergeant Colin Joseph Kenny. Colin Kenny was born in the Sydney suburb of Summerhill on the 28th of September 1923, the son of Thomas and Mary Kenny. He attended De La Salle College in Marrickville and the Maris Brothers High School in Darlinghurst, and after leaving school worked as a messenger with the Postmaster General. On the 25th of April 1942, Colin Kenny enlisted in the Royal Australian Air Force. He was trained as a wireless operator air gunner, and in May he received his air gunner's badge and was made sergeant. Kenny embarked for overseas service from Melbourne on the 29th of July 1942, arriving in Canada the following month. As part of the Empire Air Training Scheme, he was one of almost 27,000 RAAF pilots, navigators, wireless operators, air gunners and flight engineers who joined Australian and British squadrons in Britain throughout the course of the war. Kenny underwent months of training in Canada, and in November 1943 he was promoted to Flight Sergeant. That month he left for the United Kingdom and further specialist training. On the 4th of October 1944, he was posted to number 463 Squadron RAAF. As part of Bomber Command, the squadron flew the 4-engined Avro Lancaster heavy bomber. On the night of the 28th of October 1944, Bomber Command launched a major bombing raid on the U-boat pens in Bergen in Norway. Flight Sergeant Kenny was the wireless operator air gunner on board Lancaster JOS, which took off from the Royal Air Force Base at Waddington shortly before 10:30 p.m. The raid was largely unsuccessful, as poor visibility meant that most crews could not see the target. Of the 15 aircraft committed by number 463 Squadron to the mission, Lancaster JOS was the only one that failed to return. It was later determined that the aircraft had crashed into the sea near the target. Those killed in the crash with Flight Sergeant Kenny were fellow Australians Flying Officer Andrew Lay, Warrant Officer John Boyle and Flight Sergeant Francis Langdon, and British Airmen Warrant Officer John McIntyre, Sergeant John McCainch and Sergeant Eric Booth. Only Warrant Officer McIntyre managed to bail out of the aircraft, but his parachute failed to open and he did not survive the landing. He was buried in the Bergen Church Cemetery. The rest of the crew have no known grave. Colin Kenny is commemorated on the memorial to the missing at Runnymede in Surrey. He was 21 years old. Flight Sergeant Colin Kenny's name is listed on the Roll of Honour on my left, among almost 40,000 Australians who died while serving in the Second World War. A photograph of his name listed on the Runnymede Memorial to the Missing is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Flight Sergeant Colin Joseph Kenny, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please be upstanding for the reading of the ode and sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them.
lest we forget.
Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over, but in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the Director and staff, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorials Development Project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.